Today I'm looking at the 2014 CXC CSEC Biology Past Paper, multiple choice, of course, that is paper number 1. Question 1. A plant which has reduced leaves with no chlorophyll, lacks a proper rooting system, and flowers abundantly is most likely to be found. And my answer is going to be B, living parasitically on another plant. If a plant lacks chlorophyll, lacks proper rooting system, however, it is flowering abundantly, then the nutrients would have had to be obtained from somewhere. So I think the most appropriate answer would have been B. Item 2. Refers to the following food chain which shows the feeding relationship in a freshwater habitat. Microscopic algae, mosquito larvae, small fish, large fish. The organism to which the least amount of energy is available is, I chose D, large fish. It is considered that as we move away from the producer, the energy available is being reduced by 10%. So by the time we get to the end of a food chain here, there would be but little energy for those organisms to use. Item 3 refers to the following list: number of legs, body temperature, shape of body, type of body covering. The dead remains of a previously unknown animal are found in a forest. Which of the features listed above could be used to classify the animal? I chose C, number of legs, shape of body, type of body covering, because the organism would be dead, so you would not get a true representation of the organism's temperature. Which of the following type of bacteria is important for returning nitrogen gas to the atmosphere? Denitrifying bacteria, and that comes straight from your nitrogen cycle. You could have a look at it. Question number 5. A mature plant cell is different from a mature animal cell because a plant cell has a large permanent vacuole. I chose C. A large vacuole is pretty much confined to plant cells and not animal cells. Animal cells would have small vacuole. 6. In a comparison between osmosis and diffusion, which of the following statements is not true? And I underlined not true because you need to pay attention to that. Both processes require energy to move particles across a concentration gradient. I chose B, as osmosis and diffusion are both passive transport and energy would not be required to do their work. Question number 7. Which of the following organelles is the site of aerobic respiration? Mitochondria is always going to be correct, so I chose D. The cytoplasm is the site for anaerobic respiration, and nucleus and chloroplast would have been out of this list. Item 8 refers to the following diagram, which represents the metabolic process carried out in plants. Now, we look at the diagram here. Water, light, carbon dioxide is needed. It says it's a plant cell. Chlorophyll, of course, is there in the chloroplast, and the cell is giving off oxygen and food. Now, the food produced is starch. Starch is usually stored in the leaf of plants, with the exception of onion and scallion that would be storing reducing sugar. My answer here is going to be B. 9. Which of the following is not an autotroph? Autotrophs are organisms which make their own food, so the fungi would not be an autotroph. It would be an heterotroph. So my answer there is going to be A. All the others would be making their own food. We move on to question number 10. Question number 10. We're looking at leaves. Item 10 refers to the following experiment. A green and white variegated leaf is exposed to sunlight for 3 hours and then tested for starch. The results for the test are shown in the diagram below. Here we have one leaf with green color and white color, and the other leaf shows after the experiment the green area is now changed to blue-black. The white area takes the color of the iodine. Now the question is asking, based on the experiment, which of the following condition is necessary for photosynthesis? Now the condition necessary for photosynthesis is going to be chlorophyll. If you observe, the white area that is lacking in chlorophyll did not change color to show the positive test for starch, which is blue-black. 11. When enzymes are boiled, they are unable to function. This is because an increase in temperature. Now, the increase in temperature is going to denature the protein of the enzymes. Hence, I chose C. Be reminded, enzymes are not organisms. Question number 12. Which of the following occurs as a result of deficiency of nitrogen in plants? Now, you're going to be having stunted chlorotic plants with reduced yield. Stunted chlorotic plants with reduced yield. So you're going to definitely have yellowing of the leaf, and of course they are not going to be producing much of a food. The most suitable answer there would be B, and again this is like textbook answer. Not much processing required there. Alright, 13. Which of the following is a function of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach? Alright, it provides a medium for pepsin to work. Of course, you know pepsin and renin, they are in the stomach, and they were better at a acidic pH, right? A low pH. So hydrochloric acid would have been acid, of course, so then it would have been a low pH, for which is suitable for pepsin. Number 14, the role of respiration is best described as, I chose A, release of energy. That's pretty much the coolest definition for respiration. It is pretty much a release of energy from the food we eat, and of course that is stored in ATP. 15. Item refers to the following graph, which shows the oxygen uptake of an athlete at rest, during exercise, and after a period of exercise, the recovery period. Now we're looking at this graph and we want to look at the y-axis. There is oxygen level, and on the x-axis we have time. Now the highest concentration of lactic acid in the athlete muscle occurs where? Now here we would find the lactic buildup taking place just at the end there of exercise, where a whole lot of oxygen is being used up. So I chose B to be the answer for question 15. Now we up on into question number 16. Number 16. Which of the following is not a reason for placing green plants in an aquarium? Now this question seems to be one of those questions that continue to repeat from time to time. 16, my answer there is C, removing chlorine from the water. Of course the plant could remove, could be a food for the organism, could of course provide oxygen, and could of course remove waste, at it being carbon dioxide. So of course C is going to be the most suitable answer. 17, which of the following is an effect of nicotine found in cigarette smoke? Increase heart rate. And this again is a very popular question. That's what nicotine does, and it's like textbook. It's right there in your textbook, and it will be explicitly stated as it is here. 18, the right ventricle collects blood from the, be careful here, it's the right ventricle, so you want to make sure that you remember the parts of the heart. The right ventricle is of course connected to the right atrium. So please don't make the mistake to say that your answer is going to be vena cava. Of course, it's going to be C, the right atrium. And we move on down to question number 19. An amoeba obtains all the oxygen it needs by diffusion via its cell membrane, while humans need to have a special respiratory surface for this process. The best reason for this difference is that I chose D, human surface area to volume ratio. That is why we are not able to do like the amoeba. So our answer for 19 is going to be D. 20 refers to the following diagram, which shows the longitudinal section of a stem of a plant. Now, the part labeled X is the companion cell, and the companion cell is of course found on the phloem. Alright, so that again is a pretty easy one for most persons. 21. Under which condition will the rate of respiration in plants be highest? Of course, I chose B, sunny and high windy day, or sunny and high wind speed. Of course, your rate of transpiration is going to increase. So 21 is going to be B, sunny and high wind speed. 22. Mineral salts in plants are transported mainly through the xylem vessel. Remember, it's a xylem vessel that is acting from the root upward, taking our water and mineral salt. So we are upping on now to question 23. Now, storage organ in plants provide for vegetative reproduction, for development of embryo, to ensure survival when nutrient is scarce. So my answer for 23 is going to be D, and that again doesn't require much explanation, as all those are true. 24. Which of the following is not a form of excretion in plants? Carbon dioxide diffusing in through the stomata. Of course, it's going in, so definitely it could be excretion. And of course, the carbon dioxide getting into the plant there is to enhance the or facilitate the process of photosynthesis. 25 refers to the following diagram of mammalian kidney. And there we have it nicely labeled: the cortex, the medulla, the pelvis, that type of a thing. Into which of the structure is urine empty? Of course, it is going to be in the pelvis, so that's going to be C or 3 on the diagram. We're moving on to question 26. 26. Which of the following organ is most directly affected when the pituitary gland is malfunctioning? It's going to be the kidney, because you'd understand that the kidney regulates the water in the blood, and the, of course, pituitary gland has a whole lot to do with that secretion of ADH. 27. Which of the following is not a feature of a leaf of a xerophyte? Of course, stomata abundant on the upper surface. Not even in a regular leaf there is stomata abundant on the upper surface. It is usually abundant on the lower surface. So the answer here, it is going to be A for 27. So we move on to 28. The main function of a cartilage at the end of long bone is to reduce friction. The main function of cartilage at the end of long bone is to reduce friction. So the answer there is going to be B. That again is textbook. 29. Which of the following correctly describes movement in plants? We could think about this one. Growth movement is usually irreversible, so that bit is true. And of course, movement are part. So C is going to be our answer, locomotion, is something that is confined to animal, while movement is popularly used with plants. So we could say a plant move and it is irreversible, a growth, or it moves pretty much part, the limbs swaying or closing, as would have been the shame old lady plant. We're going on to question 30. Refers to the following diagram, which shows the structure of a typical vertebra, and it is nicely labeled as would have been in the textbook. Which of the following shows the correct labeling of the parts? I have chosen C. So 3 would have been the neural canal, 4 would have been the centrum, and 2, of course, would have been the transverse process. And this is a recall question. It's coming directly from the text. 31. Which of the following is not true of locomotion? And what's not true? I chose D. It is a characteristic of all living things. So here we have it. If you were supposed to compare 29 and 30, locomotion is not, of course, true for all living things. Some would just move like a tree would. Question 32 refers to the following results of an investigation of how woodlice respond to light and moisture. The results show the number of woodlice that move to varying condition: light, dark, moist, and dry. The above responses are important to the woodlice in order to, I chose B, ensure that they do not become dehydrated. Now you understand, if they are exposed to this dry condition with their body type, they will become dehydrated, dried out, and of course too much light, they are not really adapted for that. They are usually under dark areas. That's just pretty much their type of habitat. Item 3 refers to the following diagram, which shows a coordinated response to a stimulus in human. So the stimulus is at X and the coordinating center is at Y and the response is at Z. The role of Y in the illustration above is to interpret changes in the environment. So I chose D for my answer. For a student to recall his biology notes, action takes place in the cerebrum. Now that is the frontal lobe of the brain for which conscious thought takes place. The cerebellum is for balancing. So of course it couldn't be the cerebellum. Alright, 35. Which hormone causes a person to show superhuman, enhanced strength in an emergency situation? We say in Jamaica, when trouble take your pitney shot fit you. The scientists say it is the adrenaline that would cause this type of a response. So we chose B for the answer, which is adrenaline. 36. Which three structures of the skin are involved in temperature regulation? Now the sweat gland is going to be a part of this because sweat is leaving the body with heat. Then the erectile muscle, which controls the ear follicle on the skin, and of course you know the ear will stand to trap AIR on the skin, or it will lower pretty much just to keep the skin cool. Then we have the capillaries, which will flow close to the skin if it's hot and deeper down into the skin if it is cool. So my answer for 36 is going to be A. 37. The function of the choroid layer in the eye is to, quickly we know that the choroid is to nourish the eye, but here our answer is going to be B, as it prevents internal reflection. And that again is going to be textbook. It does both. Let's move on now to question 38. And that refers to the following diagram of a section through a joint. And what it wants to be answered is which of the above label component reduce friction. And this one is going to be another nice and easy dandy. It's going to be B. We're looking at the cartilage here and here. Between here we are going to have some synovial fluid assisting with that. So the cartilage and the synovial fluid is going to be reducing that friction. So of course our answer is going to be B for 38. We move on to 39. Refers to the following growth curve for an instar during one stage of its life cycle. Now, this is a wonderful question. At which point does molting occur? Now, molting, different animals experience or show molting differently, right? And at molting, there is somewhat a dormancy and then a takeoff. So I chose C, which is this section here of a graph, to say that this is where molting would have been taking place, because the animal would have been shedding some part of its body or changing out something there just to move on to the next stage. So it's somewhat dormancy. So you'll see some dormant thing taking place here, and then zoop, it's all off again. We move on to question 40. Question 40 refers to the following activities involved in the menstrual cycle. I like this question, and usually the menstrual cycle falls into the null curriculum. Now, the important thing about this question is to understand at what point does the menstrual cycle begin. So I chose C. It says that development of the Graafian follicles, after which we are going to be having the repair of the uterus lining, and then we are going to have ovulation taking place, and then you are going to have shedding of the uterine wall, and that is what some person would call the menstruation, or they have other names to call it. So pretty much a menstrual cycle begins right after the menstruation there. So it's very important that you understand that you can pick up on what is happening first, second, third, that type of thing. So for 40, the answer is going to be C. For 41, it refers to the following diagram of a flower, and the question asks which of the labeled parts is responsible for the production of male gametes. That's going to be the anther. So our answer here is always going to be B. And this, of course, is straightforward pretty much from any textbook that shows the flower. At 42, 42 refers to the following diagram. And of course, this again is a familiar diagram. The most appropriate heading for this diagram is going to be fertilization. And of course, it's going to be fertilization because that's what it's called in the textbook, and that is what is happening in the diagram. 43. During pollination, pollen grains, which are small, light, odorless, and smooth, are most likely carried by the wind. And again, this is pretty much the characteristic of this type of a pollen grain, and it's textbook. You can learn this, you can study this as if you were studying your notes. 44, contraception is used primarily to limit the size of a family. So taking your birth contraceptive, of course, they will limit the size of your family. They will, of course, reduce or maintain a relatively sustainable population size. 45. Which of the following statement is true of wind dispersed seed? They are found in succulent fruits. My answer there is going to be D. They have feathery ears which allow them to be taken great distance, and of course they are just floating in the wind. Then we have 46. Which of the following events does not occur during mitosis? That's chromatid exchanging genetic information. This process takes place in meiosis, not in mitosis, where we have crossing over in meiosis. 47. In which of the following does meiosis occur? C is our answer here. The testes of mammal. Remember, it is the haploid number of chromosomes that is being passed on. So meiosis definitely will have to take place where the number can be half. 48. A girl has blood group A and her brother has blood group B. Her mother is blood group AB, heterozygous. They both have the same father. Which of the following are possible genotype of a father? For this particular question, once you would have done adequate practice with your genetic cross, you can either choose to start just randomly pull something from the list that is here, and that would nicely help you to cross. So if you look at my little genetic, my Punnett square here, I tried both. It's sort of mixed up because I'm doing both. So the first thing I went with was with O, because I know that O is somewhat recessive. So my answer to 48 is going to be D, where I chose the heterozygous here and the recessive O here, and that would return me the type of offspring that was mentioned. So here we have BO and we have AO, that type of thing. When that is happening, you are definitely, if it's a heterozygous, we're just going to talk about the dominance. So if it's AO or BO, we're just going to say B or O. 49. A plant breeder grows a new variety of tomato which has desirable characteristics. To develop this variety, he sometimes encloses single flower in bags. Which of the following is most likely a reason for this? I chose D, to prevent entry of pollen from other plants. You want to maintain that purebred quality, so you really don't want external interference. Question 50. Which of the following is an ecological implication of genetic engineering? Ecological implication: loss of biodiversity. Now, loss of biodiversity, you would understand that there are animals or organisms that obtain their nutrient differently. If you think about the panda bear with that diet of bamboo, if we have limited biodiversity, it could impact, of course, medication. It could impact how other organisms feed and all that bit. You can relate to the fact of a food web or a food chain, and of course different organisms have different feeding desire. 51. In which of the following ways can hypertension be treated or controlled? Eating iron-rich food, low carbohydrate diet, low salt intake, exercise. I went for exercise and low salt intake. So it's going to be C, which is, of course, exercise and low salt intake. Of course, you wouldn't have to worry about the concentration of the blood too much, and the blood trying to send pump quickly, get water and all of that in order to maintain that constant internal environment. So just reduce the salt, exercise, so that you can burn that extra fat to stay healthy. 52. Abuse of prescription drug is considered a disease because it affects the functioning of the body. So that which affects the normal functioning of the body, usually it is referred to as, of course, a disease, right? Because on a normal day, your body would be functioning normally. So if you look at, of course, any disease, it affects the functioning of the body. 53. Which of the following is a sign of AIDS? Again, here you will have to be looking at the symptoms of AIDS and the signs of AIDS. Of course, remember, symptoms are those that the patient usually tell us, and signs are those that we can detect or we can see. So a fever, you would detect a fever, but of course a rash you'd be able to see. So I chose B for 53. 54, a vector is defined as an organism that transmits disease organisms. All right, and that is textbook. That's what a vector does. So the answer here is going to be D for 54. 55, a boy stepped on a nail in the garden. He is rushed to the hospital where he is given antiserum. This provides, the answer is A, it provides artificial passive immunity. Passive immunity is a short-term immunity which results from the introduction of that antiserum from another person or animal here to treat with the nail joke. So here it's going to be A. 56. A group of fish, snail, watergrass, and tadpole lives in a freshwater pond, may be described as community, because it's a group of different species living together, and of course it adds up to a community. 57. The mark release capture technique would most likely be used to determine the population of snail in a vegetable plot. Here it is going to be D. Alright, snail are those slow moving stuff, and you want to know if you are able to capture them, recapture them, and that type of thing. Now this is the most suitable answer here for 57. 58 refers to the following graph. Which graph best represents changes in population density of a natural animal population with respect to time? It's always going to be C for the answer, and it is graph 3. You'd understand that a population inhabiting anywhere, it will take on this S-curve model. As soon as it starts to face environmental resistance, you will have this type of a crest being formed, showing that organisms are dying, and then we of course have birth, and of course all this is happening right about that which we call the carrying capacity of the environment, and its carrying capacity speaks to the area at which the organisms can operate at optimum in that environment. 59. Which of the following is not an example of renewable energy resource? Of course, oil is not a renewable energy. The more we use oil, it is depleted, and it just doesn't come back anytime soon, or it's not coming back. So oil is going to be our answer there. And the final question, 60. Which of the following practices does not help to conserve the environment? And that's going to be overgrazing, allowing the animals to eat too much from one place. Then that is going to rip away all the vegetative covering and leave the soil bare for sheet erosion, then gully erosion, then rill erosion, that type of a thing. So this is going to be our final response, overgrazing. So the answer for 60 is going to be A. Until we meet again, I encourage you, if this is your first time around, to become a member of the CSEC Biology, the cover page. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be informed when there is a new publication. I want you to also give me a like if you like what we presented, and I want you to also share so that other persons can benefit and become a part of this intellectual community. I want to also remind you that on a Friday evening for the rest of 2020, we are going to be having our biology HSB live session between 6 in the evening to 7. We are covering the topics that we would have covered on the page for the week. So for this evening, we are going to be looking at characteristics of living things. We are going to be looking at cells. We are definitely going to be looking at microbes, and we are going to be inviting persons over who are sitting the CSEC HSB and the CSEC biology exams. I want you to tell me in the comment section what time of the week, what time of the day would have been best for us to have a live for you based on where you are. So if you are, for example, in Jamaica, you could say I'm in Jamaica and the live would have been better for me if we had it at 5 to 6 instead of 6 to 7, that type of thing. Thanks very much for watching. Please come back. Until next time, walk good.